Have you spent a significant amount of time living outside your passport country during your developmental years? Do you come from an expat, military, diplomat, missionary, or international business family background? If so, then this podcast is for you.
Welcome to the TCK Research Podcast, where we discuss the current state of research on third culture kids, cross-culture kids, expat families, and international life in general.
My name is Andrea Schmidt, and I've been an expat for over 30 years, having lived in a total of 9 countries. I'm a coach for TCK girls, and I'm currently completing my master's degree in psychology.
And I'm Mathieu Gagnon, an adult third culture kid who grew up in 6 countries until the age of 15. And I'm now a professor of psychology in Ontario, Canada.
Every episode, we bring you a fascinating conversation with a leading researcher in the field.
If you're listening on YouTube or another platform, please subscribe to our channel. And if you enjoyed this episode, please press the thumbs up or like button, share it on your social media platforms, or send it to a friend.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can reach us at tckresearchpod@gmail.com.
Let's jump right in.
Enjoy the podcast.
Today's guest is Katja Aegerter, a psychologist, and at the time of this podcast's release, a Ph.D. candidate at the Faculty of Clinical Psychology and Psychotherapy at the University of Basel, Switzerland. Her research investigates the systemic effects of transition stress on expatriate families and explores the unique experiences of TCKs. She also conducts training sessions for TCK parents on behalf of several European ministries of foreign affairs. In addition, her private online practice aims to provide tailored one-on-one support for parents and families worldwide in both German and English, helping them navigate the complexities of life and care for their mental health in a preventive way. And today we are talking about her 2025 paper entitled Expatriation Stressors and the Wellbeing of Accompanying Partners, a Commonality Analysis Approach, published in the journal Frontiers in Psychology. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the TCK Research Podcast. Today we have a special guest, Katja. Hi, Katja. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm fine. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for joining us today. May we ask, where in the world are you calling from right now?
I am currently sitting in Bern in Switzerland.
A city that is close to my heart. Bern, Switzerland. Yeah. Andrea, are you still in Mexico?
I am still in Mexico. I'm calling in from Cancun today.
Perfect.
And what about you, Mathieu?
I am calling in from Kingston, Ontario, Canada. All right.
So we have 3 countries.
3 people, 3 countries, 3 different times.
Yes. Time zones.
Yeah. So this is how our audience knows that's the game that we play. This is how we do it. And so, Katja, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today to discuss your wonderful recent paper.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. Before you continue, I want to thank you for the invitation.
Oh, you're welcome.
Every chance I get to speak about my research, I'm happy to jump on. Thank you.
Yeah. That's great. And I know the feeling where you put so much work on research that whenever you have an opportunity to highlight it and to promote it, it's always worth doing that. So let's start with something. Let's start with a broad question. Our audience always likes to know, like, you're a researcher, but what is your own TCK or expat background? What's your experience? What's your story, basically?
Oh, it's going to be a long story.
Let's go. We like long stories.
Oh my God.
I'm the timekeeper. I'm going to cut you off.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Keep an eye on it. Where am I coming from with this interest? It's a very long story. So I was born and raised in the same place, and I spent my whole childhood and adolescence basically in the same place in Germany. But internally, I felt like I never belonged. So the first opportunity I had during my studies to do an Erasmus, which is a European exchange program for students, I jumped on it. My fourth semester at university, rather early on, I jumped onto this opportunity to go to Spain and study in Spain for a semester. And that's actually where I met my husband, who is not from the same country as I am. And since we met during an Erasmus, it was kind of obvious that we both share the same mindset of moving around, of being interested in other cultures in other countries. So we started, first we started out long distance because I was still finishing my studies in Germany. He was finishing his studies in Switzerland. And so we commuted for 4 years, which I very much enjoyed as well, because I had everything of both worlds. And then I moved to Switzerland almost 20 years ago. I left Germany, finally getting out of there. And our first posting abroad together as a couple was in 2008. We moved to the US and started a family there after 3 years. So we moved back from the US, including one child, one TCK already then. Moved back to Switzerland. Moved from Switzerland to 2 more countries, adding another child, adding a dog. And so once I started having children, I was interested in what does this lifestyle that I so much enjoy and I so much embrace, and we as a couple had embraced before, what does that actually do to our children? Because I figured it must do something to kids if you uproot them all the time, if you place them in a new environment. So I started learning about this. I started reading about it. And then while we were abroad on our first posting together with the kids, I started a master's degree in psychology. And I wrote my master thesis on adult third culture kids and their experiences, what gave them stability in this world of change. And so I had written this master thesis, and everybody in our environment, since we were posted abroad, was so interested in my research. And so everybody kept inviting me, the embassies, the international clubs, the international schools. So I started talking about this topic and somehow became the expert without even knowing it and without even wanting it. And so my whole professional career started shaping itself around this topic. And in 2021, I started a PhD. Again, investigating expatriate families, TCKs, mobile families. What does it do? There is this program at Basel University where I do my PhD. It's called Home Abroad. And they started investigating expatriate families out of the motivation that they saw in their clinic, in their psychotherapy clinic. They saw a lot of children because my colleagues were native speakers in English. So all the expat children would come to them for therapy or for counseling. And they saw certain patterns in these kids and they started investigating. They wanted to see why, where are they coming from? Why do they all show similar patterns of challenges and problems? And so they started this program. I had 2 colleagues who did their PhD doing research on this as well. And then I came in, I started doing my research on this. And yes, ever since, I've been researching this since 2021. I've published my first article this year, which was a long way, and was very happy, very happy to publish this. Yes, and I mean, coming from this background, I've so far lived, I don't know, 8 countries. I've lived in 4 countries with my kids. This is just, I think, the personal interest became the professional interest. And since I'm a very curious type of person, I always just want to understand processes and impacts and challenges. And so this is how I ended researching all of this. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thanks so much. That included the second question that we had.
Kind of.
Sort of,
Kind
of, right? Yeah, because we were like, okay, how tell us why you were interested in analyzing these various stresses. I think that your colleagues found at the university in Basel in also you. And also, if you could also go little bit into the impact on the well-being of expat partners and spouses, how did you boil it down to this specific interest then?
My initial research project that I was interested in was actually, I've always been interested in family systems and family systems theory, which means
Yeah.
family systems theory basically investigates how do the elements or members of a family impact each other. And
Yeah.
we know by now that a family always needs to be seen as a whole. You cannot take one element out of a family and it impacts, everything impacts each other. Every person impacts the other person. The stressors or challenges that affect one person usually have some kind of effect on the other persons. And so that's where I came from with my research interest. I actually I developed a family stress model for expatriate families. So I chose some stressors, and the original family stress model tried to investigate economic stressors on parents. What do economic challenges, how do they stress parents, and how does this actually translate into the behavioral and emotional response of parents? And then how does this affect the family system and ultimately also the children? So it was this whole step. And then looking at the whole system. And that's where I was coming from. I looked at the original family stress model and I tried to adapt this to expatriate families. So I looked at the literature and I tried finding out also from a personal experience, from talking to clients, talking to other people in the similar situation. I tried to think of, so what are the biggest stressors for expatriate parents when they move abroad with their children? What are the stressors for them that might impact the family system? And so the key stressors that I looked at ultimately were perceived stress, just whatever stresses parents. Then the second stressor was isolation that I looked at. The third stressor was perceived social support. And the fourth one was perceived cultural distance. So I took these four stressors and built a questionnaire around these stressors. And I think we will be talking about this later on.
Yeah.
And then I included, in the original model, I included also some family constructs and ultimately the well-being and the adjustment of the children. And since to analyze or validate a model like that with a lot of variables, you really need a big sample. And so you are a little bit limited by your sample size, whether you can really test the whole model or whether you just test parts of it. So in the end, for this one publication that I did, I just basically took out a part of my full model and tested those four stressors and their impact on well-being. Because in the first step, I wanted to find out, okay, so which one of those four is the most prominent stressors for the well-being of the parents? Yeah. And then, I mean, going forward, I investigate more of the well-being and how does that affect the children. But the first step was looking at these four stressors in particular.
Okay, so in this paper, just to repeat for the audience, you're interested in perceived stress, perceived social support, isolation, and perceived cultural distance.
Yes.
Also.
Yeah.
Yes. And before we go on, can you just explain what you mean by cultural distance, just so people understand what that means?
Yes. So cultural distance just is somebody's understanding when you move from your home country to a host country, how different are these two places when it comes to climate, social environments, food, eating, easiness of getting around, public transport, all these amenities that you have in your home country, and how much different is the country that you move to. And it's called perceived cultural distance because everybody perceives it in a different way. So that's why it's called
and we want to
perceived.
talk about this perceived. So you're interested in looking at these stressors in relation to expatriate partners or spouses' well-being.
Well-being.
But what's interesting is, as you just said, you don't talk about stress or social support. You talk about perceived stress and perceived social support.
Mm-hmm.
Why does that make a difference? Why do you add the perceived bit? What should we understand about this?
Yes. I think it's important to understand that every person perceives things differently. It's a subjective experience, right? Two people in the same place, coming from the same background, might perceive things in a different way, and that's why we looked at the perception of things, because there is so many other individual factors that play into this, like the personality of the person, for example. You can be an introvert, or you could be an extrovert, or you can be open to experiences or not really very open to experiences. What also plays into this is the prior experience of moving or not. If somebody has no experience, they might perceive it more stressful to move to a different place. So that's why we looked at perceived stress and perceived social support, because sometimes it differs on how individuals, what they need and how much support they get, and whether it helps them to feel supported. I might not need as much support from others, from external support sources, than somebody else. So that's why we looked at the perception of
Even if you
support.
have, objectively speaking, the same stressful situation, you might need
Yes.
less
Yes, you
support,
can. I
right?
mean, you can place two people in the very same situation, and depending on what kind of a backpack of resources, of tools you step into this situation, you might perceive it completely different than the other person. Really looking at
Indeed.
individual factors that come into play when you move and when you relocate.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much that you um looked at the perceived
Mm-hmm.
variables that you
Mm-hmm.
chose. Yeah.
Mhm.
If we look at the methods you used, can you tell us a little bit about the participants of your study? You already mentioned the sample size, so that would be
Yes.
how many participants you included, and
Mm-hmm.
also how you recruited them, please.
Yes. So for the full study, as I said, that we tried to investigate this whole model, we
Hmm.
had 333 participants. It's a difficult
Mhm.
number to say.
Yeah.
And for the study that we are talking about, we had,
Mhm.
since we only investigated the partners and spouses, we had 207. So that reduced it a little bit. Of the full sample that we had, it quite an interesting demographics, I think. It was almost 90% females, obviously. We're not
Yeah.
sure whether females are just more open to report on these things, even though the questionnaire was anonymous, so nobody had to reveal their identity. But we had 90% females taking part. Also 90%, the age range was around 35 to 54, so mid-age range. Also, the age range of the children was made sense to the age range of the parents. Um, we had 93% were in a married relationship or in a domestic relationship. They were with their
Mm.
partner. What made it a little, or what limited our study a little bit, was also that we had mostly Western participants, and that was
Yeah.
probably due to the fact that where we recruited, and I will talk about this just now, where we recruited our participants was just, I
Mm.
reached out to organizations, and so
Mm.
it just made sense that it's so many Western participants. They were all highly educated. I think at least almost 90% had at least a bachelor's degree, so they were all
Mm.
very educated. What was really interesting to me was that almost half of them had relocated 5 or more times, which I find impressive. It was, I mean, very
Yeah, that's
typical
big.
for this population,
Yeah.
but 5 or more times. And the children of almost two-thirds had lived outside of their own passport country for 6 years or more. So we also asked how long the children had been outside of their countries. Yes, and for the recruitment, we tried everything. We really took a long time to recruit all our participants, and we also gave ourselves almost 2 years. We left the
Oh
survey
yeah.
open for
Oh,
almost two
okay.
years because we were really hoping to get more and more participants. So I reached out to international organizations like UN, World Bank, any contacts that I still had from my private
Wow.
network. I was
You're
stretching
Yeah.
milking them.
my I was really milking my own network. That's true. And at this point, very grateful to all of them who participated or who forwarded the questionnaires. Reached
Yeah.
out to ministries, to development organizations, international schools,
Wow.
previous
Yeah.
international schools my children had attended. We posted in Facebook groups. I became a member of Facebook groups of expats in Malaysia, expats in, I don't know, all kinds of countries. And I asked the admins whether I was allowed to post my survey there. And we sent out many, many emails. And in the end, we were pretty happy with the number of
Yeah.
participants that we had, because over 330 was
That's good.
really a
Yeah.
good number considering the topic that we are covering, because
Yeah.
usually in this area of subject area, it's not that easy to get that many participants. So we were very
Right.
happy actually with the recruitment.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Very,
think you
very
can be
good.
very proud. Yeah.
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 Okay, so these 207 participants, you asked them questions
Mhm.
about well-being, about
Yes.
perceived stress, about perceived social support, about isolation, about perceived cultural distance. Can you give us an example, like one example question for each of those variables? Like, what did it look like? What kind of answers, what kind of questions did they have to answer specifically?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, So for putting together my whole questionnaire, I used established psychological assessments. So we went into the literature and we tried to find scales that we could use that were all already validated. Because if you just come up with your own questions, it's not going to be a
Yeah.
validated scale.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
so we tried to find established assessments that we could use. But since we tried to test so many variables, we really needed to have short ones, because otherwise the
Yeah.
questionnaire would have been like 2 hours to
Yeah.
answer. So we
Yes.
Yeah.
tried to
And you wouldn't
find,
have 207 participants.
no, we
You would
would
have
never have
27.
gotten
No.
exactly. Then
Yeah.
nobody is willing to fill it out. So we
No.
Yeah.
tried to put together a questionnaire that would take 20 to 30 minutes maximum. And that is
Yeah.
already, I mean,
That's
considering
a
that
lot already.
330
Yep.
people would even be
Yeah.
willing to fill this out was really already a success story. So we
Yep.
put together this questionnaire, and to give you an example, for perceived stress, for example, there was this sentence and then or the question, and then the participants had to rate it on a Likert scale, like from
Yeah.
0 to 4. So the question for perceived stress, for example, the first one I think was, in the last month, how often have you felt that you were unable to control the important things in your life? And it
Mm.
was,
I'm
and the
laughing.
perceived stress scale has 5 items. So it was really 5 items like this,
Right.
really investigating deep down. So how are people
Yeah.
feeling? For the perceived social support, those were quite interesting. And the scales that we used were not particularly adapted to the expatriate context. So we just had to take whatever we found with the length that we needed. For perceived social support was one statement was, when I'm sick, I can without hesitation ask friends or family to take care of important matters for me. And then they have
Mm.
to answer strongly disagree, too strongly agree, whatever they
Gotcha.
found. For isolation, there were 3 questions only for isolation. We found a really short questionnaire there. And one question was, how often do you feel you lack companionship? And
No.
they're hardly ever,
Yeah.
some of the time, or often. For perceived cultural distance, it was a whole long list of, it was like an introduction sentence, which was, think about your home country, respectively previous posting and current host country. In your opinion, how different or similar are these two countries in terms of And then there was a long list of, there was climate, there was social environment, there was food and eating, there was
Yeah.
schooling, there was public transport. So there was a lot of things where they just had to click, agree, disagree. No, very similar, not very similar,
Right.
completely
Always on a
different.
scale.
They
Yeah.
rated it
Yeah.
on a scale,
Yeah.
exactly. And for parental well-being, we used there is a questionnaire by the WHO that is used in a very wide variety of subjects, and it's the WHO well-being questionnaire, and it has only 5 items as well. And so one item is, I have felt cheerful and in good spirit, and then agree, disagree, strongly disagree. And so that's how we measured all of the constructs that we wanted to measure, and really got a
Cool.
good insight into people. And I'm still grateful to all
Yeah.
the participants that they opened up like this.
Yes.
It was
Yeah.
really,
It
yeah,
can't be overstated.
Imagine.
feel
Yeah.
grateful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Good.
thanks for sharing that. I was just while you were posing the questions, you saw my faces, and I was just like, oh
Yes.
my God, had you asked me those questions like when I just recently moved, the answer would have been yeah, completely different from maybe if you'd asked me if I've been in the country for 2 years already,
Yes. Yes,
right?
exactly. That's
Yeah.
also why we limited our the participation to participate in the study. So the inclusion criteria to
Yeah.
participate in the study, it said that you have to be on a regular
Yes, I
uh,
saw that.
employment rotation of 2 to 6 years, because
Yeah.
we didn't want to capture the experience of people who had really just arrived, because then,
Yeah.
I mean, usually stress levels are higher, isolation levels are higher. But
Of
also,
course.
if somebody is staying in a country for longer than 6 years, they almost get to the point where they feel like migrants who plan to stay in a country longer term. So we
Right.
really wanted to capture this in-between phase of expatriates, and what does it do to them, and how stressed do they feel, and how isolated do they feel. Yes, so
Mm-hmm.
that's why we
Yeah.
limited this.
Yeah.
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 A very good
Perfect.
idea. Mm.
Okay, so we're going to ask a few questions about the results now, which is like the really important bit. But before we do, I just want to make sure so you used a statistical method called multiple linear regression.
Mhm.
Now, the audience might go, "Oh, this is way over my head," and believe me, it's sometimes way over my head as well. But
Same.
before we continue, yeah. The idea is that basically you the idea of multiple linear regression is that you were interested in well-being, and of course well-being varies between people. Some people have more well-being, some people have less well-being, and what you wanted to do is you were using these variables: stress, perceived social support, isolation, and perceived cultural distance, as a way to try to predict or explain who has more well-being, who has less well-being, and so on. The difference in well-being. So the idea is that this kind of method, you're trying to find which, if any, of those variables
Mhm.
might contribute most or more than others to differences in well-being between people. So just for the
Exactly.
audience, this is the game, the statistical game that Katja was playing, noticing that there are differences in well-being among people, in her participants, and trying
Mhm.
to predict this difference between people in terms of these variables.
Mhm.
So,
Mm.
Andrea, I believe you have a question about that.
Yes, I do. Question number 7. So, your results showed that perceived stress explained is the strongest variable no, hold on a second. Let me start again. That was a little bit of a blurb. The results show that perceived stress explains the strongest variable and the difference of well-being between people. Why do you think that this perceived stress has such a dominant impact
Mhm.
compared to the other factors, like, for example, cultural distance, perceived cultural distance?
Yeah. I think this is a really important finding, and
Hmm.
it's not really that surprising when you think about it a little more closely, because perceived stress has such a dominant impact, because it kind of captures it all. It's not limited to a certain situation or to a certain like isolation or social support. It's just the overall capture of how stressed do you feel. And so this includes the cumulative emotional and psychological load of the experiences people make when they relocate. And that's why I think perceived stress came out as such an important stressor, whereas cultural distance and the other ones did not come out as strong because they also kind of play into this stress perception. I mean, it like bundles up all together and then increases the overall perceived stress of a person. And so I think that's why. And also stress is has such an impact on a lot of things. It affects mental health, it affects physical health across many contexts, not only expatriation, and the other constructs measured more really specific
things,
contextual feelings or perceptions. And the stress one, I mean, people can be stressed for whatever reason, not only for the expatriation, but also for very, very many other reasons, despite or together with the expatriation. And the other variables, we're asking more for the specific contextual experience of the participants. So I think that's why perceived stress probably came out as the biggest stressor of them all, since it is linked to so many other things. Yeah.
Stress,
totally
stress is a
understandable.
stressor.
Yes, stress is the stressor. That's true.
Perceived stress. Perceived stress. What is
stress.
stress?
What are you so stressed about? My stress. There's a kind of a
It's
metacognitive
a
thing
loop.
going on, right?
Yes,
It's a loop.
totally.
Yeah. So perceived stress was the variable that most allowed you to explain the difference in people's well-being.
Well-being.
Isolation, although not as strongly as perceived stress, also came out as I think the second most influential predictor or factor. Can you share examples or insight into how isolation manifests for partners specifically during expatriation?
Yes. I mean, if we look at expatriate spouses or partners who accompany the expatriate employee, if we just want to start their journey together and we look at their experience throughout the beginning of an expatriation or throughout the entire expatriation, you arrive in a new place and usually maybe you have 2-3 weeks to get settled, to find an apartment, to find a supermarket. And in the best case, you can still do that together as a family. In the worst case, your partner has to disappear into the office the next day and then you're all by yourself already then. But in the best case, let's say you have 3 weeks together and then at some point your wife or husband goes to the office, goes back into normal routines, normal structures, work environment, work context. Then the next day, you as a partner or spouse take your kids to school for the first day. They are embedded in a school environment. They are being received. They are having these welcoming events. They are having these introduction events. And you as the partner go home.
Yep.
And you are there at home in a country where you don't speak the language, in a country where you don't know how to navigate the normal everyday life. So you get home and you sit there. You might not speak Russian or whatever is the language that you need to speak in your country. And so you, as a partner, you are so much more exposed to falling. I mean, to really being lost in this space where you are. Because, as I said, you might not know the language, which makes it difficult to connect to other people or to locals, at least. It makes it difficult to even go grocery shopping if no one speaks English or any common language that you might know. And usually the partners and spouses are also the least supported. They don't get an assistant from, I don't know, the HR office to take their hand and, oh, let's go to, I don't know where and help you find your stuff. So you are there, and maybe you are even in the situation that before moving, you had a job. you were engaged, you had a role, you had an identity connected to your job, and then suddenly you are being ripped out of that, placed in a different country, away from your known support system, away from your family, away from your friends, and there you are. And I think that's why it makes so much sense that isolation was actually the second most prominent stressor. Yes, because you're just there, and you might feel lost. And this sense of being lost can also transfer over to your family. So I think it's really important also to point out that depending on how the partner, the family manager at that point feels, it can impact the entire family's adaptation. And so that's why I find it so important to look at it as well.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because if you look just from a broad human perspective, our species, Homo sapiens, hates isolation, right? I mean, this is what we do to prisoners, right? We put them in
Exactly.
isolation.
In isolation
It's
cells.
a form of punishment. And
yeah. And
Yes.
Andrea, I think you would know a little bit about that, right? You get a
Yes,
sense
we're
of
so well, social creatures, and I've been in the situation many times where it's like it was. Let me tell you that I think and I have to go into deeper thoughts later on, but I think it has never happened that my husband was with us for 2, 3 weeks on vacation. It was mostly arriving or flying out on a Friday, arriving on a Saturday, having a Sunday together if we're lucky, and then Monday,
then
off to the office. Off to the office. Yeah. So you have to.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It's a big one. Yeah.
Sorry for disappearing.
Yes. No, go ahead.
It's sunny in Switzerland.
Oh,
wow.
Yes. Sunny burn.
It's much nicer when it's sunny, I have to say.
Yeah.
I could make a bad pun and go, you don't want to get a sunburn. Get it? Burn Switzerland?
I never made that word game.
I apologize to the listeners.
It's okay.
Let's keep it at one joke, Mathieu. Let's keep it at
Yes.
Okay, so the third one was perceived cultural distance, and according to your study, it was marginal. Did that surprise you?
At first it did, because I had, from my own experience, and from also talking to people, and that's why I included this variable into the study. I looked at previous studies, and perceived cultural distance always came out. It did surprise me in the end, in the beginning, but then in the end, when I looked at my demographics of my participants, it made total sense, and I should have looked at it immediately, because we asked the people also to indicate their home country and their current host country. And so usually the countries were Western countries where they came from, but also where they moved to. So it is to be expected that then the cultural distance is not that big. Not that big, exactly. And so it also had less impact on their well-being, obviously, because the distance was not so big. They managed to around. Maybe it was even the same language. I mean, if somebody moved from the US to Australia, to UK, whatever, or to a country where a lot of people speak English, then there is much less impact on your well-being. Exactly. And that's why it made sense in the end.
I'm glad that you mentioned language, because that would have been my additional question now. Did you take language into account?
We did ask participants to indicate whether they spoke the language of the host country, to what level, but we didn't take that into our analyses. We didn't take that.
Ooh, I wonder if that would have influenced.
I have a big data set if anybody is interested in investigating more.
I want to write a paper. I want to publish a paper. Mathieu, are we up for this?
Yes, let's do it. So stress was the biggest predictor of people's differences in well-being, isolation, and perceived cultural distance was weak, but you would
Yes.
argue that it's not because perceived cultural distance doesn't matter. You would argue that it's because the way your study was run, there was low perceived cultural distance because people
Yeah.
went from basically a Western culture to another Western culture. Is that what I
Exactly. It
to
could be
understand?
totally
Yeah.
different if I had a more diverse
Yeah.
sample.
Yeah.
If I had
Yeah.
more people who either whose home region was, for example, in Asia, and then they moved to an African country, or then it
Yeah.
would have probably come out much stronger than what I
Yeah.
investigated, what I measured. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you,
Okay.
can I just ask
Yeah.
a question? Did you
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
perceive more cultural distance when you moved to Asia, for example, because you were in Western countries and in, for example, a very different Asian country? What's your take?
Well, I moved from Switzerland to Kyrgyzstan, and
Yeah,
it
Mm.
was a whole new world.
there you go. Yeah,
I mean, it was,
right.
I didn't speak the language. It was a very big adaptation, even just grocery shopping, because you don't go to the supermarket, you go to the bazaar. And if they notice that you don't
Oh
speak the
yeah.
language, you pay
You
much
got
higher prices.
Yes.
So,
Oh my
and
gosh.
you don't get all the
Wow.
things in the same place how we are used to in the Western world, right? You go to
hmm
one big supermarket and you grab everything. But I mean, in
Yeah.
Kyrgyzstan, I had to go to 5 different places to get my vegetables, to get my fruits, to get my flour, to get my so it took a whole day to do my grocery
mm
shopping, also because of the
Yes.
traffic and non-existent traffic rules. I
Yeah.
mean, they
Yeah.
were existent, but nobody really
Not.
implemented the
Respected
traffic
them.
rules.
Yes.
So yes, it was a very big cultural difference. But then funny
Mm.
enough, also coming back, I had to readjust myself because
Mm.
I got a little bit more flexible on everything.
Of course. Now you're
So
back in
coming back to
Switzerland.
Switzerland, whew, yes, I
Yeah.
only drove in with 30 kilometers per hour in the very beginning on every road because I was too terrified I would go too fast.
Right.
And the tickets are very
Yeah, yeah.
expensive in Switzerland, let
Yes,
me
that's
tell you
right.
from
Absolutely.
experience.
Absolutely. That's
All right.
true. Yeah.
So from your study, we can imply that stress and isolation really matters in the well-being of the accompanying partner.
Mhm.
Cultural distance might also, but with your sample, it was harder to tell. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking that even with a more diverse sample, if cultural distance mattered, it still wouldn't. Stress might still be the biggest one,
Yes.
because it
Mm.
englobes all of that, right?
Yeah.
So, given these two observations about stress and isolation,
Yeah.
uh, what are what do you suggest could be some of the most urgent improvements that organizations could make in their expatriation support processes? And I'm thinking specifically in your paper, you provide a kind of support framework, which you call coordinated support framework for partners in many
Hmm.
steps. Can you tell us about this?
Hmm. Um, I think that partners and spouses would really benefit from a more comprehensive support package through the
Mm.
employers of their partners. And especially if we consider how important the well-being of the accompanying partners and spouses is also for the performance of the expatriate employee and for the entire assignment. I mean, there is
Mm.
research out there that confirms that if the family is not well, it reflects back on the partner, and then
Yeah.
there's a lot of early termination of expatriate assignments because the family is just not getting along well enough. So I think that employers really need to become aware of the value of the accompanying family and that they need to look at ways to provide support also to the spouses and partners, since they are kind of the driving force behind the expatriate employee. And so,
Mm.
I mean, in the perfect world, and I know there is always budget limits in companies, in ministries especially. But if I could design the perfect world support scenario for expatriate families, I would start already by preparing families. And I mean, this is already happening often, that at least the expatriate employee and the spouses and partners get some kind of either language training or intercultural training. I would also include, and I'm not sure, maybe that's part of some trainings already, I would include some kind of a networking training for expatriate spouses and partners, just to make it easier for them to approach other people. What I would also add is, considering that perceived stress came out as the biggest stressor of all of them, I would raise awareness of partners and spouses and families of the challenges that might happen without scaring them. But I would try to give them the tools, stress management tools, coping strategies. It could be really easy strategies that they could teach them to deal with the stress, or they could provide some kind of a contact where partners and spouses can reach out to in case they feel too overwhelmed to deal with the stressful situation themselves. And so I think there should be a solid preparation package, but then also what I often hear is the complaint about, once we were gone, everything stopped. The whole support system stopped because we were gone. So what I would love to see more of is that the employer or HR or a dedicated family office would get in touch with the spouses and partners on a regular basis at least in the first year, because after the first year, I feel like a lot of family don't need as much support anymore. And, it just takes small gestures for partners and spouses to feel seen and heard, and to just be able to drop off some of the hardship of their current situation. And so I really don't think it needs a lot. It would just need one person who might make a round call to all the spouses and partners once in a while and just chat for a few minutes. And I think they would feel so much more appreciated and supported already. And I cannot imagine that this would cost so much. I mean, I don't know. There's always the aspect of the financial aspect to these things. And as I said, I feel like after a year, the need for support will decrease because families settle, children settle, the spouses settle. What I would find important also would be debriefings at the end of an assignment. And I'm not sure how many employers, how many ministries, how many people get to enjoy debriefings to really process their experiences. And
especially if they're moving on to another one, you want to think about what just happened.
Exactly.
You
to
want to
really
close that
process
chapter.
Exactly. And I mean, all of us know who have read literature in this area is that you really need to close one chapter to be open enough to open the new one. And so I really think it would be important to do debriefings also for companies. And I know that this is a big thing in missionary families. They get a lot of debriefing support. But I feel like we could take over this concept and implement it into other areas as well. And you said, Mathieu, if they move on, but also almost more important, I feel, if they repatriate.
I agree.
Not only my own experience, but also speaking to other people, listening to other people, repatriation can be the most challenging of all of the postings. And especially since if you repatriate, I mean, there's no support anymore whatsoever, because, I mean, you're coming home in, yes.
What's your problem? You're back home.
Exactly. You're back home. Lucky you. But
are you happy to be back?
Right? But nobody sees how these stays abroad and all these experiences and the accumulation of these experiences change you as a person and change your perceptions, your feelings, your history. And you're not coming home as the same person. You are changed. And your environment where you repatriate to might not have changed that much, but you suddenly don't fit in anymore as well as you did before. So I feel like for repatriation is even more important to offer this debriefing support. And I'm not sure whether anybody does this for families who repatriate. Yes, so this coordinated comprehensive support framework, I would love to see that. And if anybody needs help with that, I'm here. I'd love to develop and design something like that.
And part of it, something you mentioned that I thought was quite interesting is you mentioned that there's pre-assignment screenings
Hmm.
for the employees that are about to head out to select, which employee should head out and to kind of get a sense of what the challenges might be. But you also
Yeah,
propose that there be screenings for accompanying partners.
exactly. Yes.
What kind of things would you screen for in those partners?
I think I would screen for, I would do some tests for personality, whether their personality actually
Mm.
fits into this life model of expatriating, of moving abroad. I would probably also factor in the spouses and partners' current situation, like job situation, family situation. Do they have parents that are aging and they might need to take care of? Do they have a very enjoyable job where they identify a lot with? What kind of a job do they have? I mean, if there
Hmm.
is these jobs out there, right? Lawyers that are very specific for a certain country and where you studied for a very long time. And if you once have a career in this, it's really not that easy to leave this career to go
Yeah.
abroad where you might not be able to practice in your former profession. So I think I would take in a lot of factors. And I mean, investigating this partners and spouses, I almost feel like it's more important to screen them because
Mm.
they are really the foundation and the scaffolding in the background.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Mm.
from my experience, the expatriate employee goes into a company, goes into the office, goes into ministry, and is right there in a structure. Whereas,
Yeah.
as I said, as I spoke previously, the partners and spouses, they are being thrown into the cold
Yeah.
water. So
Yeah.
it
Mm.
might even be more important for them to be a good fit for expatriation. I mean,
Yeah.
probably both
Mm.
partners, but
No,
I find it equally important to screen
I
and
agree.
test, or at least include them in the pre-discussions. And I figure that companies do that already, but I don't think that they are being tested or assessed that thoroughly. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't,
and how
I,
much the data from those tests are taken into account after
Yes.
to decide.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I've done this for of over 30 years, and I've never had, you said companies are doing that already. I've never
No,
You
experienced that.
haven't?
Nope,
maybe
not
that's wishful
once.
thinking.
Wishful thinking. And you know what? I
Yeah.
was also thinking, would that really help the whole situation? Um, And what would companies do with information? So what if you have an accompanying supporting female partner who is a lawyer in Germany and is suddenly about to be sent to Beijing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
how would an HR office handle that? Like assume that, oh, she's not going to adapt?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and even you also mentioned with ailing parents. So if my mom is sick in Germany, the company wouldn't, knowing that, the company
Mm.
then wouldn't send my husband, or basically it wouldn't give my
Yeah.
husband the job.
No.
It's
Yeah,
sort
it's
of,
so
it's
No.
tricky,
complicated,
it's
eh?
Yeah,
tricky,
yeah, it's
So
right?
tricky.
It's
complicated.
tricky.
Also, considering that this all is private information, not even of the
Exactly.
employee of the company, but of the
Yeah,
spouse of the
Yeah.
employee of the
yeah,
company, that
yeah.
makes it
It,
more
Yeah.
tricky,
yeah,
obviously.
it,
Maybe there needs to be some assessments that couples can do at home when they consider an
Yes.
expatriation, and then
yes,
it
I think
stays
that
in
would
Yeah.
between the
be,
couple, also to
yeah,
maybe discuss the couple relationship, because
yeah,
there is research saying if the couple relationship isn't in a good shape before we leave on an expatriation assignment, it might even
mm,
be
Yeah.
more
mm,
hardship on the couple relationship. So maybe that could be an idea, that not to include
Yeah.
them into the employer
yeah,
assessment, but to just give them a voluntary assessment that they could
Yeah.
do
yeah,
at home to
for
look at their whole
themselves.
situation, to give them a
Yeah,
whole package of questions. You might want to discuss these questions at
yeah,
home as a couple
Yes.
before you expatriate, before you even apply for this expatriate position. Maybe something
yeah,
like that could be the solution.
That's
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 right.
that's what it
yeah,
is, isn't it? It's really about how it's really, I guess, in a sense, taking a decision that is taking all the facts into account. Like, have you
Yeah.
taken all? Because I think people might
Have you
say,
thought about
"Oh,
this?
we're going to live in another country. How exciting!" Wait a minute. Have you thought about access to your family? Have you thought about this?
Exactly.
Have you thought about that? Have you thought about your job? And I think it's better to know
Yeah.
than to not know. But yes, there is a
Yeah.
question of then what would the company did,
Yeah.
even if they do know,
Yeah.
Exactly.
I
It's
think
That's
like
being
the
true.
question.
aware,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's
not
like
being
Absolutely.
the
aware.
question for oh, so you've been married for 10 years. Are you planning on having children? It's like,
Yeah,
Exactly. Oh, yes.
so do we want to send your pregnant wife to Beijing? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It's sort of, it's a
Yeah,
balance. It would be a balancing act.
it is. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Also for
Yeah.
privacy reasons and confidentiality,
Right.
I think there could be an issue with including
for sure.
families and spouses into the
Yeah.
considerations, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think
yeah.
so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the last part of your paper is called Limitations and Future Directions. You already
Yes.
mentioned before that your sample was predominantly female and from Western countries, and you
Mm.
mentioned the importance of studying male accompanying partners and more diverse family models.
Mm.
What initial hypothesis do you have about their unique stress experiences then?
Oh my God, so many. I feel like it's such a whole other world as well. I mean,
Yeah,
while I feel like my sample that I have really displays the realistic demographic scenario we have at the moment for expatriate
I
families
think so
is
too.
mostly females, mostly female accompanying spouses. But
Mhm.
we really need to keep in mind that it will be increasing, that there is going to be male partners or varied family constellations as well expatriating. And so, for the limitations on male partners, I think what would need to be investigated there, obviously, is also the career disruptions that they experience. Um, there is a lot of countries where you still are faced with stigma if you are the accompanying male partner and you don't have a
Mm,
job, but your
mm,
wife is earning the money. What?
mm,
Where
Hmm.
you are the houseman, where you take care of the kids. So I think stepping away from paid work to take over these tasks, it can be viewed with a certain hesitation in some countries, I
yeah,
guess. And then for the male partners, I feel like the loss of professional identity might even have a bigger impact on them. Just usually considering the usual stereotypes, and
mm,
losing their purpose might even be perceived more hard, harder
yeah,
on
yeah.
male accompanying spouses, I feel. And also, there is a lack still of support mechanisms and support networks and systems for male
Yeah.
spouses. I mean, I remember one story when we were in Central Asia in Kyrgyzstan, there was the International Women's Club. Already the
Mm.
name did not include the
Yeah,
male partners.
yeah, yeah,
And I know that there were some few males who wanted to become part of this fun network, but
Yeah,
then the females in the group were a little
I
hesitant to
I would have
oh
include
been
my
them,
knocking on that door.
God.
Let me in. Let
right?
me in.
And
I
so
need
That's funny.
friends.
they were allowed for some of the activities, but not for others. So I think men are still less likely to have this community
Mm,
because the
mm.
realistic scenario is still predominantly female
Yeah, the
in these
traditional
expat,
role.
the
Yeah,
traditional distribution. Yes.
yeah.
Um, so I think they might even experience increased isolation. And now, if we looked at my research and isolation emerging as the second most dominant stressor, I think if we
Mm,
only looked at male accompanying partners, this might even be higher, this number. So,
hmm.
yes, I think there is a lot of room still for investigating male partners. And then for alternative family models, I mean, same-sex couples, depending, I mean, we live in the perfect world where this is accepted, but then, I mean, already Kyrgyzstan, Central Asia, other countries, Arab countries,
Mm,
you cannot be openly transitioning as a same-sex couple, maybe with children, and live like that. It can be dangerous, can be safety issues, can be social, legal, cultural issues when it comes to same-sex couples. So I think that also needs investigation. And single parents, I mean, I don't really don't know how they manage to get it all under one head. The whole expatriation, adapting, finding a new life, getting their kids to school. They need to be in so many different places at the same time that I really think that there is very high stress experience amongst single parents as well, going into an expatriation situation. So I really think that there needs to be more empirical testing on this, because current research, and as I said, it is difficult to find people who are willing to participate in studies like this. And then to find even these smaller groups of male accompanying spouses, or of single parent households, or same-sex families transitioning with children, I think the number is very limited to be investigating this population. So it will be difficult, but that doesn't mean that it's less important, I think. They are as vulnerable, if not more vulnerable, than other expatriate families. So yes, I think.
And when hearing you talk about, for example, if we just think about males, we were talking about hypotheses about their unique stress experiences, but I was also thinking that, statistically speaking, of course, you can't make individual differences person by person, but I think men have a different way also to deal with stressors than women do. And that can
will be
further
interesting.
either ameliorate or make the situation worse,
Worse.
and so that's there's they tend to react with more aggressiveness, where I think on general women would tend to reach out and try to build community. So there's a whole program to do. Let's close with this one. If you wanted to continue this, and you did mention that this is part of a larger project, but we looked here at stress, social support, isolation, cultural distance, all of them from a perceived perspective. Are there any additional stressors off the top of your head that two or three of them that you thought are a must for future researchers to look at in terms of expat family well-being?
Yes. What I would love to see, as we just talked about earlier, how difficult repatriation can be, I would love to see the stressors of repatriation and what that does, and how different that is, and what kind of an impact it has on individual well-being, but also on families. Then we investigated, our population was really people moving from Western countries to Western countries. So it didn't include people who moved to maybe places where there are safety concerns, geopolitical concerns, where there were needs for evacuating people. These kind of stresses I would be interested in, because that's even another level, of stresses, which you can be exposed to as an expatriate family, depending on where you come from and which organization you go with. And what I would also be interested in, because I know that a lot of the accompanying partners and spouses are, for example, not allowed to work in host countries. I would love to investigate that a little bit more in depth. I have no idea exactly how to, but to see what that does to them, that they're even taken away the opportunity. They couldn't, even if they would like to, or they could because of the language, but they're not allowed to. What that does. So I think also new digital developments. What does that mean? To be able to stay in touch with friends in old postings while trying to arrive in a new one. How do you deal with this being torn apart between two different places, because we now
Which
have the
people might think
opportunity.
is a good thing, but it can
Can
actually
be
hurt
both.
a lot too.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it can make
can
it
be torn.
impossible to arrive in a new place if you are stuck digitally with
Yeah.
old friends.
And the other one. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Exactly. So
So
there
true.
are so many things
So
that
many,
could
many
still be
things.
investigated. Yes, I think you see, I'm a very
Yeah.
curious person, so I'm
Well,
could come up with a lot of things that I would love to investigate. Oh, if I only
it's a
could.
wonderful first step. It's a wonderful first step to
Yes.
study is. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, Andrea, do you want to close? Do you anything you want to add before we close this? Any questions? We sometimes have questions that we write down or off the top of our heads, and
Yeah.
No,
Shoot
you
them
know what?
away.
I would just like to mention one, or to quote one sentence you wrote, which was a simple one in between all the big words and in research. But you said such programs. So you mentioned the programs that you would like to implement for accompanying partners have the potential to build confidence in expatriate partners, which in turn may reduce uncertainty and perceived stress. I think, and the word confidence just hit me, and I thought, oh my God, yeah, that's the one that goes throughout the first months because of the stress about being in the new country. You don't know anything. You just find out how little you know, despite of having read a few things online and maybe bought a book on the special country you're moving to. Yeah, it's the
real
confidence.
world is always different. And
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And if the
Yeah.
confidence can go up, then I think everything else will fall into place quicker.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point, that if you're confident enough also to throw yourself out there in a new country, and
Yeah.
to be courageous enough to ask questions, and I
Yeah.
think that would really already make a difference. Yeah. Sometimes
Yeah.
small
If
things go a long way, right?
yeah,
So
exactly. The confidence to ask for help, you know?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
to reach
But it's
out.
like
I
you
think,
said, right? That this is where it comes. We come back to pre-screening, this idea of personality. It's much easier for somebody who's high in extroversion to get out there and be confident than it is
Exactly.
for somebody who's high in introversion. And none of these are better than the other. It's just different ways of being in the world. And so that's why
yeah.
more introverted people should be mindful that there's this challenge where you're going to have to reach out,
Even though
whereas more extroverted people.
even though to add on to this, the aspect of introverts might be able to deal much better with the isolation because they're
Yes.
happy by themselves.
Yes.
So I think there is
Yes.
pros and cons to all kinds of
Absolutely.
personality types.
Yeah.
And I think as long as you know yourself well enough, and you know
Yeah.
what you might need or not need, or what you can deal with better or not so good, then that already helps you to be aware of the situation.
Yes.
And to be aware of what is needed or not. And so
So perhaps
it can,
the best idea is based on your analysis of your personality and what you have here and your skills. Here is what we propose as a way to adapt. And it would be different to somebody else who has a different personality profile, different skills, different,
exactly.
that's the
Needs
dream
to be a
at least.
personalized support, dream support
Personalized,
system.
there you go. All right.
There's
Well,
so much
Katja,
potential.
we could go on forever, but
No.
we have to stop. It's been wonderful getting to know you, getting to know your paper, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing all of these insights with our audience, who I'm sure will greatly appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much
any last
again for
words?
having me, and and for inviting me, and for letting me speak about this. And also, it was a pleasure getting to know you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again. All right,
Thank
folks. We'll see you
Thank you,
on the next
Katja.
episode. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the TCK Research Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. Please subscribe, like, and share our podcast, and leave us a review. It really helps others find us. If you have any questions or comments, please write to us at pckresearchpod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and we promise we'll answer all emails. We wish you a good day wherever you are, and we hope you'll join us again for the next episode.